The biggest disease is corruption. The best vaccine is transparency. Greetings, respected guests, worthy teachers, and all the diligent fellow countrymen. I, Pragati Srivastav, would like to welcome you all to the talk show on Vigilant India, Prosperous India, organized as a part of Vigilance Awareness Week, which is an initiative of GD Goenka Uplearn Academy in association with GD Goenka University. I, an advocate Govind Bali, an alumni of GD Goenka University, will be moderating today's session. As a part of this noble initiative, we have undertaken two more activities, which are slogan writing and video making competition exclusively for the students of GD Goenka. In the talk show, we have a very prominent speaker with us who requires no introduction. We are all familiar with his wit and amazing answers on the national television. He is none other than Professor Gaurav Vallabh.
Hello.
When we talk of his achievements, name it and he'll have it. He is a certified risk manager, chartered accountant, company secretary, law graduate, and the spokesperson of Indian National Congress. He has taught in various reputed institutes and universities across the country, including IIMs, IICA, XLRI, and NIBM. He has also served as the director of ICAI. He has authored various papers in many referred journals and has been the keynote speaker in various reputed conferences like FICCI and CII. He has also provided consultancy in innumerable reputed firms like Samtel, SRF, Luta, and many more. He has been felicitated with the Best Young Researcher Award in 2004, Samaj Ratna Award for achieving excellence in educational and social sector, Rajasthan Gaurav Award for an outstanding contribution in the area of accounting and finance. And the list goes on. Welcome, sir. Thank you so much for taking out your time and being here with us.
Thank you, Pragati. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Today, when we talk about corruption, various instances cross our mind, and so as to curb the same, we are celebrating this week. And hence, Professor Vallabh will be briefing us all about the whole concept about Central Vigilance Commission and the mechanism of curbing corruption. The audience can type their questions down in the chat box, which shall be taken up after the interaction. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Pragati, for a very detailed introduction. Hello to all the students of GD Goenka. Before I start, I would like to convey my thanks to Professor Tanuja Kaushik and Major Sharma, who had invited me for this event of GD Goenka University. This is a good initiative, and I think as far as corruption and other issues, related issues are concerned, we can control that, we can reduce that by these type of awareness conferences or discussions. First of all, whenever the term corruption comes to your mind, what first thing comes? If I ask myself corruption, then immediately the term which comes to my mind is material terms. The materialistic society in which all of us live. The success is measured in terms of materialism. Means if I am more successful or Mr. X is more successful, generally in society it all depends that whether I'm using iPhone 12 or he is using iPhone 12. If I'm more successful or Mr. Y is more successful, then it will be measured that am I getting down from a black Mercedes or he is getting down from a black Mercedes car. So these are the norms of the society. And wherever, I will give you many examples because this is something which is very close to my heart because I had done a lot of work and research in eradication of corruption from the system and from the country. I will give you many reports, many instances in the next 10, 20 minutes. But the corruption starts from the materialism. And materialism starts with our societal norms. Because in our society, success is all about materialism. So from there, the corruption enters into the one's mind. And in our society, when I'm saying our society, I'm including Indian society. In our society, and often doesn't justify the means. We are all concerned that by X thing or by Y thing, are you having the best phone on your or in your hand or not? By X means or Y means, are you having the best branded T-shirt or shirt with you? By X means or Y means, are you having the best vehicle with you? So in our society, ends often doesn't justify the means. And to start with, I will share one episode from Mahabharata, which I always used to tell whenever these type of talks are there. In Mahabharata, when war become inevitable, means अब लड़ाई को कोई नहीं रोक सकता. Lord Krishna tried the last time. He went to the Duryodhan for peace. This is the last try by Lord Krishna. When the Mahabharata war is all fully staged out, Lord Krishna thought that let's try one more time and this is the last time. And when he had tried to convince Duryodhana for peace, you know what Duryodhana had responded. And from there, the corruption starts. And I repeat, Janami dharma nach mein pravarti. Janami adharma nach mein nivrati. He said that भगवान श्री कृष्ण, मुझे पता है कि क्या धर्म है और क्या अधर्म है. मुझे पता है. When Lord Krishna tried to give lecture that whatever you are doing is adharma, Duryodhan responded, I am aware that whatever I am doing is adharma, but materialism is there. Janami dharma nach mein pravarti. Janami adharma nach mein nivrati. I am aware of what is dharma and what is adharma. I am aware that I am contesting this battle on adharma's platform. But materialism is something for which I am contesting this battle. So, whenever we talk about corruption, the guy who is doing corruption is aware he is doing wrong. He is aware that he is not giving or doing justice with his job. But still, the materialism force is forcing him to commit this crime. The materialism at his end or his family's end is forcing him to do this thing so that he can be termed as a successful person. And the students of management and psychology will very well relate to this with the Maslow's need hierarchy concept. If you remember, guys, we had Maslow's need hierarchy: psychological, safety, love and belonging, esteem, and last is self-actualization. I will relate it to the Maslow's need hierarchy concept. Psychological needs, that is air, water, food, shelter, yes, materialism is required in that. Safety needs like security, employment, health, resource, yes, we require money and materialism for that. Third, and for this third one, the Indian society comes into play. The third need hierarchy, as per the pyramid of Maslow, if we are going from bottom to up, is the love and belongingness. And as per Maslow, the love and belongingness is all about friendship, family, intimacy. But unfortunately, in a society in which we are living, the love and belongingness is also dependent on materialism. And even if you had overcome the psychological needs and safety needs, and you are in the love and belonging needs, the materialism is still prevalent. The fourth from the bottom is the esteem needs. And in our country, in our society, the esteem needs are more related to the respect, self-esteem, and respect and self-esteem in our system and our society is also dependent on materialism. So even if you are at the fourth level of the Maslow need, still the corruption attracts you. The having a easy money attracts you. Having a materialism attracts you. And the last need, or as per Maslow need hierarchy, is self-actualization. Most of the people on or with whom we interact doesn't reach to self-actualization. So what I mean to say, the first four stages, whether it's esteem, love and belonging, safety and psychological needs, everywhere the materialism is the key. So if we are going to grow, we can't say that, okay, if he is earning 1 crore rupees a year, he will not be a corrupt. He might be requiring love and belonging, and love and belonging needs are also dependent on corruption in our type of societal structure. If one is earning 100,000 crore rupees a year, we may think he may not do corruption, but he might require esteem needs, and respect and self-esteem in society is also dependent on easy money or the corrupt money or the materialist society. So except self-actualization, in which not many of us, I will say not more than 0.1% of the society can reach, all of us are in the 99.9% of the society, which is esteem need, love and belonging needs, safety needs, and psychological needs. So the structure or why corruption is there in the society, I give you many reasons to think on this. Now the second question, and this question generally my students used to ask me that, sir, we used to have a Transparency International rating, and Transparency International ranks the countries of the world as far as the corruption is concerned. In the ranking released in 2020, in 180 countries of the world, India is ranked at 80th as far as corruption is concerned. You will be more surprised that consistently few countries are doing very well. And most of them are Scandinavian countries like Denmark, like Switzerland, like Finland. Why consistently they had performed very well as far as the corruption is concerned means they are very low in corruption index. And the new country which had entered into this low corruption index is the new country like New Zealand, which is also ranked number 1 in this year with Denmark. What is the reason? And I had a discussion on this issue with the Transparency International executive, and once I had an opportunity to discuss on this issue with the chairperson of the president of the Transparency International, and he responded that the level of education, number 1, the societal structure, number 2, the freedom, number 3. And when I asked him to explain these 3 things, he said that with education, people are getting a feel that it is not a materialism or a latest gadget in your hand which is going to give you self-esteem. It is not like that. There are many other things which is going to provide you the self-esteem. Similarly, the societal structure, where the materialism is not going to decide on your esteem or love and belonging needs. Similarly, I can say that he gave me a very unique example. He told me that per person newspaper consumption in the countries where per person newspaper consumption is high, those countries are less corrupt. Means the education, the information which a person is going to get, that is going to make the nations, as far as corruption is concerned, at the lower ranking, or as far as no corruption is concerned, at a higher ranking. So education, social norms, and third is the, I can say, the structure of the society. These are 3 things which makes these countries like Denmark or Norway or Finland or Switzerland or new countries like New Zealand, which are very low in corruption. And mind it, as a professor of business management, I can say with less corruption, you are going to attract more FDIs into countries. Like country like New Zealand, why the ease of doing business ranking of New Zealand is very high vis-a-vis those countries where corruption index is very high. The reason is that when there is no corruption, there will be a free flow, or the entry and exit barriers are not there. People will come with their money, start up the business there, and that way, the country is going to get the benefit of no corruption. As far as India's ranking is concerned, this year our ranking had fallen by 2 points. This year we are ranked as 80th country out of 180 countries, and our ranking and China's ranking as far as corruption is concerned is exactly same. We are 80th in our 180 countries, and China is also ranked at 80th rank out of 180 countries. So as far as corruption is concerned, these are few norms. Now coming to a World Bank report, before I entertain few questions from your side. World Bank had done a very exhaustive, I can say, a research on why countries have corruption and how to eradicate the corruption. And they gave a very unique answer, and I quote, "The only way to reduce corruption is the use of TTT, that is technology, technology, and only technology. Technology helps us to reduce the corruption to a very lower level." And I will give some examples out of the use of technology. Most of you might have traveled by train in your life, and most of you had also traveled by metro, whether in Delhi or Bombay or in some other big city of our country. My question to you, can anybody dream to travel without ticket in a metro? क्या आप सपने में भी सोच सकते हो कि आप बिना टिकट मेट्रो के ट्रेवल कर लो? But there are many instances, and during our travel by train, we might have seen at many occasions that people are traveling without ticket into those trains. Why? Why this is the difference? The reason is only use of technology. Can you enter metro station without ticket? Not possible. So when you can't enter, you can't travel. But the same technology is not used at railway stations. So technology is a biggest thing which can reduce the corruption to a very large extent. I will give you many more examples. Like in tendering, where we used to say there is a big corruption, but if the entire tendering is on the basis of e-tendering, corruption is going to control or is going to come down. I'm not saying we can make it zero. It's not possible. Zero can be only by societal norms. Zero can be only by proper education. Zero can be only by the feeling that materialism is not something, a yardstick of success. Yardstick of success is something else. Yardstick of success is about knowledge. Yardstick of success is how much you love your friends, how much your friends reciprocates that love to you. But unfortunately, right now, in our societal structure, that is not there. Then what is the answer? The answer is use of extensive technology in all spheres. If you are using technology in all spheres of decision making, whether government, whether private, whether in our jobs, I will give you an example. We always used to think, okay, a X company, people are not working. But if I install a thumb impression where the entry and exit times are recorded, then I can reduce this corruption also. And corruption is not only by money. Corruption is that you are paying me salary, and if I'm not working, that is also a form of corruption. That I'm corrupt. I'm taking the money which I don't deserve. That is corruption. Like in Indian Railway, you guys are very young, but I can give you some examples of 1980s or early 90s when extensively for ticket booking, the computerized ticket was not used. And we used to buy the railway reservation tickets also from the station. That computerization was not there. And if you compare that era with the current era, the component of corruption had drastically reduced. I'm not saying and I'm not claiming that there is zero corruption. Zero corruption is only by proper norms and the education. There is no other way out. But we can reduce the corruption with the use of technology. The more extensive we are going to use technology in our system, the component of corruption is going to come down. If I am a professor, I am paid to take a class, and if I am not taking that class, then this is also a form of corruption. This is a corruption because I am getting a money which I don't deserve. So if you ask me, sir, what is corruption? And I will say any inflow which a person is having in the form of cash or in the form of any other material, maybe in the form of jewelry, gold, gifts, which I don't deserve, that is a corruption. So even if you are giving me this pen, which I don't deserve, then this is a corruption. So I always used to tell my students that if you want to gift me a pen, gift me, but only after release of final grades. Because before final grades, there may be a quid pro quo, and lawyers can understand this, the meaning of this maxim, quid pro quo. And after the release of grades, if you are giving or gifting this pen to me, it is out of natural love and affection. That is not corruption. So corruption means quid pro quo. Corruption means any inflow in the form of cash, in the form of material, in the form of gadgets, in the form of sweet boxes, in the form of kaju kishmish boxes, which you don't deserve. But if my employer is giving me on the eve of Deepavali a box of kaju kishmish, and I know that it is given to every employee of this company, that is not corruption. Because I deserve that thing, because I am on the payroll of that particular company. If my employee is giving me this pen, and this is given to all professors of my institute, and this is not corruption because it is given to everyone. This will be termed as perquisite for me, not corruption. Corruption and perquisite, the difference is quid pro quo. If you are giving me something and you expect something back, then that is called as corruption. So you may ask me, sir, even if then in that matter, the salary is also a corruption because you are getting a salary and the organization expects you to work for you. I will say no, that is not a corruption because that is as per the agreement which we had entered. If you are doing some favor which is not as per the agreement, as per the norms, then that is something called as corruption. So if I am a ticket collector and if I am a guy who is working at Gurgaon toll and I am asking you to leave without paying the money, and later on I ask you to give me 300 rupees as a loan, then that is called as corruption. Because you are giving me the benefit which you don't deserve. I am allowing you to move your vehicle without paying the tax. But now we have those electronic systems by which those things can be controlled to a very large level. No vehicle can move until and unless the system is not going to allow them. So here again comes the use of technology. So friends, before I take your questions, I would like to sum up what I had shared and those 2-3 statements which I want you to be very clear at all times. What is corruption? Corruption is anything which a person receives, which he don't deserve. That is the answer. Then second thing, how countries or societies can reduce corruption? Then I will say there are 2 answers to that. There, on one side, the education, the societal norms, and the structure of society. These 3 things has to be taken care of. On the other side, the use of technology in decision making should be increased. If with these 3 things, if technology can be improved, the corruption can be reduced to the 0 level, ideally. Third thing, that how come societal structure is going to tell you that whether this society is more corrupt or less corrupt, then I will say success in a society means what? If his success in a society means material terms, and that society is going to promote corruption. But if a success in the society means the honesty, if the success in society means the knowledge, the success in the society means that how much actually your friends and relatives loves you, then the corruption level is going to come down. And if the success level, as the success level is going to go up, the corruption level is going to come down. And last but not least, that a society where end often doesn't justify the means is going to promote the corruption. And what Duryodhan said to Lord Krishna, that Janami dharma nach me pravarti, Janami adharma nacha me nivrati. I am aware of what is dharma and adharma. I am aware that I am on the path of adharma, but materialism is attracting me to be on this particular. So I gave my initial 10-20 minutes address. I am open for questions if you are having any.
Thank you so much, sir, for the wonderful insights and telling us what corruption really means. We'll start with the questions.
Sir, an important part in today's developing economy is privatization and extensive privatization. We have seen a lot of PSUs being privatized, a lot of tenders being given to certain companies. Do you think that it is also an area which the CVC should look into, or the Vigilant Commission should look into, that why tenders or the privatization which is going, or the companies are being sold to particular companies only? Is there any vested interest of the governments in power?
Till now, in my discussion, I was focusing more on the self side. The question which you had asked me is more from the government side. And there comes the role of the Vigilance Commission. Now, whether CVC should do this or CVC should do that, before that, I would like you to just have a look on is the reason for which CVC is in place. And there are three reasons. There can't be a fourth reason. Number one, to enforce anti-corruption laws and regulation. This is the first reason of CVC. Number two, to minimize the corruption in the system. And as I had pointed out, that zero and minimization are different. And minimization, the only and important tool is the use of technology in the decision making. And last, the third thing is the inculcation of the ethical values and in the society. And what do you mean by ethical values? As I told you, the focus, the sole focus of success on materialism should be removed, should be reduced, should be made as zero. Yeah, my knowledge, my status in the society should not always be judged with my brand of shirt or with my brand of jacket or with my brand of specs. But unfortunately, that is there right now. And that is the reason it increases the corruption in the system. Now, your question that whether privatization increases corruption, no, there is no empirical research like this, that with more privatization, less corruption. In fact, I can give you many examples of those countries which are altogether, there is a public undertakings. Just an example of erstwhile USSR. What was USSR? I'm not saying Russia. So USSR, we used to have a public sector undertakings which are working in those countries. It doesn't mean that they are not having corruption in those systems. Now, second part of your question, that some public sector units are sold, selling PSUs which are not of strategic importance. Can be good or bad, can be discussed, but the selling PSUs of strategic importance is always bad in any form of society, whether it's capitalistic or socialistic. But selling PSUs which are not of strategic importance, then there comes the question that are you selling at the fair price or not? Are you selling at fair terms or not? And what do you mean by fair terms? And I will give you a very a simple answer to your question. Like, I took a flight to Pragati's hometown, that is Varanasi, and I landed at Lal Bahadur Shastri Airport. Now, from airport to Pragati's house, if fair value of taxi is 200 rupees, but as the guys who are there outside, they had recognized that I am not from this place by my accent of asking the how much fare you are going to ask. They charge 300 rupees. I paid 300 rupees, he received 300 rupees, I reached to the Pragati's residence, but that is called as corruption at her end. Fair price means a price which a knowledgeable willing buyer and a knowledgeable willing seller are going to exchange for a commodity which is, or for a service which is well defined. So here, the buyer, the seller is knowledgeable, but buyer is not knowledgeable like Professor Gaurav, because I don't know that the fair price is 200 rupees. So question that whether selling these to a private companies is corruption, answer is, if it is not of strategic importance, no. But question comes whether fair price they had sold or not, it all depends on what is the price at which this product or service can be exchanged between knowledgeable willing buyer and knowledgeable willing seller. So there comes the question of societal norms. If the guy who is selling is more concerned with the nation's development than his own development, then he is always going to sell at a fair price. He is not going to dilute the price. But when his forces, the forces which is behind him, like forces which ask him to show to the society or public at large that he is successful, and for showing success, he requires materialism, and he will enter into some sort of corrupt practices, maybe in the form of slight deviation or maybe in the form of full deviation. That is the answer to your question.
Now coming to a legal aspect, now when we talk about the statutory recognition of the Vigilance Commission, do you think that ensures its independence?
See, again, Govind, I as a person, I don't believe in carrot and stick theory.
Okay.
Because that theory can reduce the corruption only for short term. But then people will find out something from some other way. Like, if you are going to control me, that sir, you are not going to eat sugar. Just an example. Just you had defined that, sir, for you, eating sugar is a corruption. And I will say, okay, then let's have good. Are you getting my point? So there is a maxim in law that the more detailed the rules are, the more easier it is to get around them. आप जितना डिटेल मुझे बोलोगे कि सर आप शुगर नहीं खा सकते, तो मैं कहता हूं अच्छा आपने व्हाइट शुगर का मना किया था, लेट्स हैव शुगर इन सम अदर फॉर्मेट. आप बोलेंगे okay, sugar and good also you can't take, then I will say okay, now I start taking glucose in its raw format. So instead of that, you should define the norms like this, that anything which you do, which you don't deserve, is corruption. Now here, as a lawyer, you may say, sir, laws can't be made like this because laws has to be structured. So there comes the debate which you and me are having, that should we give more rights? All rights are there with all institutions. It all depends whether those institutions uses those rights in a right format or not. One has to use the right in a right format. And you know, when I'm saying first right, it means adhikar, and when I'm saying second right, it means correct. So rights, by giving rights, by everybody knows that driving a bike without helmet is an offense, is not following a law. But just go outside and see, you will find rarely a person riding a bike using a helmet. Everybody knows that one has to drive a car using seat belts. We are aware of these facts. And if you are not having seat belt, it's an offense. But you can see how many of them are saying. So instead of that, here comes the use of or the contribution of education and the societal norms. Like, if societal norms is like this, that anyone who is driving a car without a seat belt, if society considers that person as a fool, then everybody is going. But here, in our type of society, the other side is there, that a person who is driving a bike without a helmet is treated as a more heroistic than a person who is driving a bike with a helmet. So we have to change the norms. We have to change our thought process. That is the example which I am trying to give. कि हम बाइक चला रहे हैं और हेलमेट नहीं है, तो it's more a sense of heroism. But if I am able to inculcate a value in the society, that driving a bike or riding a bike without a helmet is not heroism, it is a foolishness. People on the road are going to laugh on you and see this fool who is riding a bike without a helmet. And here comes the contribution of education. Here comes the contribution of the societal norms. I will give you one more example. And that's very interesting. Like, using mobile phone while driving is an offense. Everybody is aware of that. Most of us, if we have a societal norms, like I will give you an example. Last year, I was in Paris for a conference. I landed at the Paris airport and I dialed my good friend who live in that city, and I was in a cab, and I dialed him that I landed and I am on my way to your residence. So he told me that, are you in a car? I said yes. So he said, just talk minimal because I don't disturb the driver. I am talking, not the driver. He just asked me, sir, you are coming to my place. Please come fast and have a minimal talk. Please don't disturb the driver. That is called a societal norm of that particular country. But if societal norms are different, then the results will also be different. So, जो हम बोल रहे हैं ना कि सबको पता है सही क्या है, और महाभारत में दुर्योधन ने भगवान श्री कृष्ण को कहा है, और सबको पता है गलत क्या है, पर सोसाइटी और एजुकेशन उसको बताए कि जो तू गलत कर रहा है वो हम भी गलत मानते हैं, तो करप्शन कम हो जाएगा. पर अगर सोसाइटी और एजुकेशन उसको ये बताए कि जो तू गलत कर रहा है वही सक्सेस है, वही एक सक्सेस का पैमाना है, तो वो गलत बार बार रोज दिन रात हर क्षण करेगा. That is what I am trying to say. So your question that giving more rights to CVC, all rights are there. It is the organization or body which has to use their rights for a right cause. If you are going to use the rights for a wrong cause, even if I give all rights to you, you can't use those rights for a right cause.
So, LP Singh Committee in 1978 and a parliamentary standing committee in 2008 recommended the enactment of comprehensive central legislation to remedy the issue of autonomy. So why have the same not been considered up till now?
See, there are many issues. There was a need, and I wrote one op-ed in Indian Express, I think 3-4 years back, that we require a single corruption law. And the friends from the law fraternity who are going to hear this, they can relate this in a more better manner. We had many corruption laws in many enactments. And sometimes they are contradictory to each other. We don't know whether this law is above this law or above this law. So we require a single, simple, comprehensive corruption act. We require a single, simple corruption agency, anti-corruption agency. Like some cases of corruptions are with CBI, some with CVC, some with ED, some with DRI. So there is a contradiction in each other. Some with Narcotics Bureau. So any country who wants to tackle, although I'm not of that belief, I told Advocate Bali about that. But although I don't believe in characteristic theory, because that is going to give you benefits only in short term. In long term, you will not find the benefits from these type of theories. But for short term benefits, if you want these type of things, have a comprehensive single agency. If you are going to have multiple agencies to control the corruption, things are not going to be done.
So now coming to another point, do you think that right to information is somehow very important for a comprehensive society which is vigilant? Because we have recently seen that there have been a lot of amendments in the Right to Information Act, the appointment of CIC also. So do you think it will indirectly apprehend the access to vigilantism?
Yes, RTI as such, I feel, had given a lot of power to society at large to challenge the people sitting at the decision-making chairs. I feel that. There may be some misuse also, but as you had pointed out that sometimes more uses of Right to Information Act creates hindrances to the decision-making process. Yes, we had seen them in the past, but at large, from a large perspective, if I see, then I can see that to involve the society in a decision-making process, you have to give rights to the society. And rights to the society can be given in the form of RTIs, so that they should feel involved. And when they will feel involved, then the norms of the society also they are going to change. Otherwise, if you are not going to get them involved, they feel, okay, if somebody is taking decision, what goes out of my pocket? Let them take. But if they are involved, no, you can find out the nitty-gritties of this decision. You can find out who are the co-bidders, what are their financial bids. If you can find out these things, then the level of transparency is going to improve. So as I told you, the society education. I will give one more example, and that's having a good impact. The institute with which I am related, we used to teach in first year business management program a compulsory course on business ethics. Now, you may challenge, there may be plus and minuses to this particular decision. You may say, sir, ethics कोई पढ़ा सकता है क्या सर? सबको पता, आप ही ने दुर्योधन वाली बात बताई, सबको पता है धर्म क्या और सबको पता है धर्म क्या है. But no, by a continuous teaching, by a continuous training, the feeling of adharma coming to your mind, that these adharmas are not good for you. These adharmas are not treated as a success for you in the society. That is the reason these things are happening. I will give you one more example. That if we decide in the society that that person is going to be treated as a more wealthy who donates more, अगर हम ये नॉर्म्स कर लें कि वो व्यक्ति ज्यादा अमीर माना जाएगा जो ज्यादा दान देता है, अपन जैसे we used to say ना that these are HNIs, high net worth individuals. So instead of HNIs, I can say HDIs, high donations individuals. तो अगर सोसाइटी के नॉर्म्स HNI to HDI हो जाएंगे तो लोग कहेंगे अरे यार सोसाइटी का सक्सेस तो डोनेशन है, it is not my wealth, so corruption level कम हो जाएगा. So we have to change the definition of success. Like I always used to say, what is the definition of success for a student? The marks. Although marks is highly correlated with the understanding and education also. That's true. But there may be some cases that a guy who is the 4th rank and the guy who is 1st rank, the guy who, the level of understanding of 4th rank is better than the 1st rank. Sometimes it may be possible. Then I always used to say, why to worry? Because the industry gates are taking the success as 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th rank. But once you enter into the industry, the level of success is your performance, and performance is only dependent on your education. When you are working on the system is not going to favor you that you are a 1st ranker and I am a 4th ranker. So मेरा system slow नहीं चलेगा और आपका system तेज नहीं चलेगा. So we are at par once we enter into the industry, and there comes the level of education. तो सोसाइटी ने एक नॉर्म बनाया कि वो व्यक्ति जिसके मार्क्स ज्यादा है वो ज्यादा योग्य है. That was a norm of the society. Although I'm not challenging, I feel that marks are highly dependent on education and understanding of the education. But there may be a case that a 3rd rank or 4th rank or 6th rank guy is having more knowledge and education about the subject than a 1st rank guy. It may be possible. I agree on that. Then the answer to that question, that 1st, 2nd, 3rd is only a barrier or only a filter when you are entering into the system. But once you are entering into the system, these filters are gone. You are at par. Then the performance level is going to come out. And then performance is highly dependent on the education. So if 6th rank guy is more and having more understanding of the subject, he is going to perform well in comparison to the 1st rank guy.
So that was a very good answer. And now, time being of conscience, we'll be thanking you. So I would request Pragati to do it.
Like all the good things come to an end, we hereby come towards the culmination of a stupendous event. I would like to take this opportunity and express a heartful of gratitude towards Professor Gaurav Vallabh, who spared his valuable time and guided us about our duties as a vigilant citizen. Next, I would like to thank the entire fraternity of GD Goenka University, who following the aegis of Central Vigilance Commission took up this initiative. I also extend a warm thanks to all the people who joined in. Thank you so much. And lastly, together we all can fight any menace, be it corruption or be it any other such crime. We just need to stand together. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.